In southeastern Africa lies Lake Malawi's shimmering expanse of crystal clear water. Its coast, marked by secluded coves and golden sands, it is a lake of many landscapes and moods. Cloud-capped peaks and island paradises, quiet fishing villages and white sand beaches. The Big Five roam the national parks along its shore, while the lake's depths swarm with colorful cichlids. The third largest and second deepest lake in Africa, Lake Malawi is home to more species of fish than any other lake on the planet. It marks the convergence of three countries, Malawi, Tanzania, and Mozambique, a meeting place for communities who share its vast but fragile resources. And today, a growing draw for discerning travelers looking to experience world-renowned hospitality and breathtaking natural beauty away from tourist hordes. At night, fishers' lanterns out on the lake glimmer as if reflecting the night sky. The same sight greeted David Livingstone 160 years ago when he named this the Lake of Stars. Also known as the Calendar Lake, Lake Malawi is 365 miles long, 52 miles at its widest point, 12 main rivers flowing into it, and one river flowing out of it. In 2019, a crew of 6 set out to circumnavigate the freshwater lake's 1,400-kilometer coastline for the first time, exploring its rich cultures, history, biodiversity, and cuisine. Journeying to every corner of this spectacular lake, this is what they experienced. Takulandirani, welcome to Lake Malawi. Ancestors of today's lake inhabitants were not the only people whose movements brought them to Lake Malawi. One of the lake's darkest periods of history was the slave trade. At the height of East Africa's slave trade around 1840, over 40,000 slaves were sold through the Zanzibar slave market each year. As many as 5 times that may have been killed in the brutal village raiding parties and in the long march to the sea. The coastal towns of Karonga, Nkhotakota, and Salima on Lake Malawi became infamous slave trading centers on Lake Malawi. Thousands died in the night raids by the Omani slavers, while many more died on the forced march that often took as long as 3 months to reach the sea.
Yeah, when Arabs came this side of the country, especially along the Shire River and the current Lake Malawi, they found yaos along those areas, and they formed kind of a relationship.
The relationship between the Yao traders and the Swahili Arab traders led to conflict as European powers moved into the region. Mlozi bin Kasbadema was an infamous ivory trader and slaver who controlled much of the gap between Lake Malawi and Lake Tanganyika. Mlozi's power represented a significant barrier to the extension of the British Empire's rule in the region.
The British people there, with the ivory, collected by the notorious Arab slave trader over there, Mlozi. And you can see his soldiers having shotguns. And above this picture, you see the people who have been enslaved. Those people were forced into slavery, and then you can see they are put on the yoke, and they were going to walk for over 1,000 miles to Zanzibar from Karonga. Yeah, so for the slave trade to finish, again, it was the white people, the British people. Some of them were missionaries, some of them were tradespeople. Yeah, and if you can see, that structure was a place where the white men were staying From there, they would do their trade. They would also go out teaching people about the Word of God and then establishing schools. And this place is no longer there, it's in the lake. The lake has expanded, that place is all taken up by the lake. But over there you can see the wheeled gun trying to damage the stockade in which Mlozi was hiding. So that gun helped in demolishing the stockade and arresting Mlozi. He was beheaded. The body was buried there. The head was taken to the governor in Zomba. And peace took over. Yeah, that gun is this very stuff. They used this very thing you see here. Yeah, so many years ago, in 1887 or something like that. They would put some stuff here, dangerous stuff, and then that stuff would come out as a bomb, damaging all what was on its way. Yeah, so this is the Armstrong gun which was used in the process of trying to bring peace.
It took the British 8 years of skirmishing to finally bring an end to Mlozi's reign of terror at the end of a noose. Halting the slave trade around Lake Malawi took much longer. Explorer and missionary David Livingstone first arrived on the shores of Lake Malawi in 1859, where he witnessed the horrors of the slave trade firsthand. He wrote in his journals, "To overdraw its evils is a simple impossibility."
Here we are in Malindi, St. Martin's, and I'm standing right before the David Livingstone stone. This stone was incorporated in this church in 1910, but David Livingstone sat on it in September 1866 on his way to Zanzibar.
Malindi kuno ndi malo ambiri yabwino kuno ku Malawi kuti David Livingstone panopa anapondapo mu chaka cha 1866 pamene anaponda malo ano mu September iwowo pamene pamabwerera ku Zanzibar. Livingstone amadusa mmene amatengera anthu amabwera kuno panali njira ziwiri, watesa ukapolo komanso kubwera ndi Chikristu. Ndetu
Jabwino.
Ukapolo unatha ndi malo amene amafikira chasimapo kunali ntchito wane ya utumiki wa Chikristu komanso ntchito ya machiritso. Chifukwa chake mukuona kuseli kwa chalichiwo kuli chipatala.
We're here in Kota Kota, the center of Malawi, and we're seated under a very special fig tree where Dr. David Livingstone sat and rested on his second visit to Malawi.
It's very interesting. This is the same tree that Dr. David Livingstone sat under and met the chief Jumbe in order to stop the slave trade.
Livingstone, the first European on Lake Malawi, named it Lake Nyasa. He must have asked the locals what they called the lake. The response, Nyasa, simply means lake in Yao. Under colonial rule, the country was known as Nyasaland, but its name today has a different origin.
The smelting of iron ore is associated with flames. And even the Chewa people, going very well back, I think they call them the pro-Chewa. Actually, they were called Amalawi because of the flames, people of the flame.
While the lake's name changed after Nyasaland was renamed Malawi at its independence in 1964, in Tanzania and Mozambique it remained Lake Nyasa. Livingstone also coined the term the Lake of Stars after he observed lights from the lanterns of the fishermen's canoes that resembled, from a distance, reflections of night sky. Visitors to the lake will observe the same phenomenon today. Later, having experienced unpredictable gales sweeping through the area, Livingstone also referred to Lake Malawi as the Lake of Storms. He was soon followed by other Christian missionaries as European influence around the lake grew. The most famous among them has become Chauncey Maples.
Kunoko ndi malo amene amafikira chasimapo.
Appointed Anglican Bishop of Nyasaland in 1895, Chauncey Maple sailed north along the lake to resume his post at Likoma when his steel boat, the Sheriff, capsized during a storm. Pulled down by the weight of his cassock, Chauncey Maples drowned near the island of Mbenji.
They found part of his arm and hand, and they preserved it and buried it here in memory of the great Chauncey Maples.
6 years later, in 1901, a new ship arrived on the lake's shores. It weighed 11 tons and was transported on a custom wagon hauled overland for the last stretch of its journey by 450 men.
And then you have seen there we have a steam engine. That steam engine is for a ship which is called Chauncey Maples. You know, Chauncey Maples was a missionary who drowned in Lake Malawi. So these people thought of making a ship in remembrance of that missionary. And then they named it after his name, Chauncey Maples. It started sailing on the lake in 1901. So that engine that you have seen there is from that ship, Chauncey Maples. We still have it. It is in Monkey Bay. It's not working, it's grounded. But that was the first steam engine for that Chauncey Maples.
Until it was recently laid up, MV Chauncey Maples was regarded as the oldest ship afloat in Africa. 3 of its former boilers lie abandoned around the lake.
Right behind me is the Chauncey Maples. This ship holds a lot of history. It was named after Chauncey Maples, who was the Archbishop of the Anglican Church, a very important figure in stopping slave trade here in Malawi and across Lake Malawi. This ship has a lot of stories to tell. It has turned from a mission ship to a military ship, to a passenger ship, to a floating bar, and even a floating hospital, yet it still stands. Today it is pretty much stripped. A lot of what it used to contain has been shared through museums across Malawi.
World War I started here in Mangochi. It's very important because the British fought the Germans.
At the end of a dust track near the Lake Malawi Museum in Mangochi, the gun from HMS Gwendoline still stands sentinel. Her captain had learned of the outbreak of war in Europe before his arrival and took the opportunity to sneak up on the German steamship Hermann von Wissmann without casualty. The more somber realities of war reached Nyasaland a few months later. Further north, German troops had crossed the Songwe River from what is Tanzania today, planning to attack Karonga. The British learned of their presence and surrounded them. Over 100 Askaris died in the subsequent battle, buried and still commemorated in Karonga's graveyard today.
World War was fought in Karonga. Why the Germans and the British are the best people to tell us why they decided to fight in Karonga.
As slavers, missionaries, and colonialists have sought to control Lake Malawi, its communities have adapted to these new cultural influences, often fusing them with their own beliefs.
So Mbande Hill became the headquarters of the first Kyungu in Karonga. Now, up to this very day, as I'm speaking, for any Kyungu who is accepted by the ancestors, he can never be Kyungu without first being ordained on top of the Mbande Hill. I did, and you go there at night, you are left on top of the hill alone. The noblemen go downstairs. Many things happen there, which I cannot disclose. But if you are not accepted by the ancestors, you not return. You die there. So I am a proud Kyungu because I was accepted by my ancestors. I stayed there for 3 hours alone. And I came back alive. And my family here were praying and crying, thinking of that. But I said, I'll go because I feel I've been told this chair is for me. It was given to me through prophecy. So my chair has got nothing to do with magic. I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, and I know it is God who gave me to be Kyungu.
Even at the time when we were in Zaire, Zambia, we believed in Almighty God. That is the one who used to pray whenever we wanted something. We Tongas and a good number of the Chewa, whom now they call themselves the Chewa. We continue to believe in Almighty God. And that's why we are the first people to receive the Christianity, the Tonga. So why? Because we believed in one God.
Their traditional religion was a very important part to create and strengthen the Chewa culture. The Chewa believed, and still I guess, in a single God. They called him by many names, but the common one is Chiuta or Chauta. This concept of a single deity is rather interesting because many groups did not have this kind of religion. They had several gods. But the Chewa believed in one God, called him different names, just as in the Bible, God is given several names. He or she, because sometimes when they talk about him, you can't know what gender, was high up there. It was not a personal God. So for God to communicate with the people, there had to be another layer of beings who could communicate with the people. And those they called Mizim. In English, we say spirits. How did the spirits communicate with the living? That's where Gulewankulu comes in. Since people cannot see the spirits, but they can see Gulewankulu. It's not a religion, but it has got a religious significance because it transmits messages from the spirit to the living. As you know, some are in the human form, some in the animal form. And each one of them, of those, brings special messages. The conflict with Christianity must have come because of not quite understanding the role of Gulewankulu. Because being a very popular and charismatic dance or institution, it was a barrier to the Christianization, and therefore there was a conflict. Up to now, we still have that conflict. So this process of Gulewankulu should be seen as a more institution of culture, of religion, of not itself as a religion, but religious significance of training in arts and crafts, training in ethics and behavior and customs. And without those, you can't have a people. And so you see that the Chewa are so stubborn, even when people tell them that they should abandon Gulewankulu. Even when they convert to Christianity, and most converted to Christianity, but deep down, they still connect with the Gulewankulu. And it is important for them, and it's important for the culture.
If you go to Mua, you will see some of the stories of the core.
Right, so you see, these are the three missionaries under the big baobab tree. Then from 1903, they had a good conversation with our local chief. 1903 is where they gave them the big land, where they start rodging, molding the bricks, and they come up with the first mission house. That's the one still standing over there. And from there, they come up with a church. And the official launch of that church was in 1907 on 25 December. So they were here because of three main objectives. One was about evangelization, two, education, three, eradication of poverty. And down here, as you can see, that's their first contacts with the local people, bring them out session churches, and also some school blocks as well. In 1913, we had also a minor seminar here in Moa. So that's it about the mission. But before those three reached here in Moa, in 1889, we had also another group of the first white fathers, and they were at Imponda in Mangochi. And they had some problems like malaria, political tensions, and tribal war, which made them to leave Malawi in 1891. So they went back to Zambia and established a mission there known as Kasama. In 1902, by the coming of these three guys here, they come up with an aim of planting a seed of Christianity, Mbeu in Chichewa. And so they had a verse from the Bible saying the kingdom is like a seed, trying to encourage us that if we want to achieve something better, we have to behave like a seed. And from here, we have also this part. In general, we just call it inculturation, trying to bring up the two together, culture and Christianity, so that we all move together. Just because a long time ago, before Christianity, we had different beliefs and religion, most of the Chewas. So by the time when Christianity entered into our culture, we had so many problems just because it was our first time. So because of that, those early missionaries were not able to motivate the local into Christianity. So it's when they said, no, this will take us much time. What should we do? Let's give them freedom the way how they can pray, so the way how they can come up with different churches, so that we all move together. That's why they come up with like independent churches. And next we have this part, we call it catechism. This is the hand drawing done by Father Boucher. He's also an artist. It's like a missio banner. And you start from there, birth, and all circles of life up to death, but also being combined with some local culture as part of the Chewa religion, Gule Wanku.
The Kungoni Cultural Center in Mua preserves and celebrates much of Malawi's rich cultural heritage.
Many of the carvers who are working here are Yao, coming from Zomba area behind Zomba Mountain. So I got an interest in all those cultures. At the time that I was doing decoration of churches throughout the country, I used to travel a lot and spend 3 weeks at a stretch in one area. And I studied anthropology. And I became familiar by reading and also traveling with many of the tribes, trying to know their origin and to discover what was the particularity of their culture. Mm-hmm. The whole idea is a development project for promoting Malawi craftsmen who have been training here and training at the earlier stage from 68 on, and have been able to find a living and improve their local condition in the villages where they live. Focus has been on promoting self-reliance. So all the artists that receive or sell their carving, produce carvings here, are for their own, so that's for their own benefit, and their work goes all around the world. So that is, they are encouraged to be self-reliant, to have their own tools, and to produce things coming from their own mind, from what they see and what they hear around them. And years back, this is to bring appreciation from the number of guests and local people of their own culture, to develop pride into their own tradition. Mm-hmm. We spell out in a very extensive way traditional religion of Malawi before the arrival of the missionary. We also have attached to the museum a cultural troupe that recreates the traditional dance from Chewa, Ngoni, Yao, various other cultures. And so we have visitors from all around the world. And also this particular care that we have for environment. You know, we live in a world where we have to live with all creatures and all kind of, including bugs and mosquitoes. We live together, and therefore we have to preserve many species, make sure that we relate to them as brothers and sisters. The same among the Malawi tribe, the same among the different religions. We have Muslim coming here, we have Hindus, people coming from all kind of religious background. And I think this is this kind of authenticity that one can reflect in saying, preserve nature, look after. Look at the garden, just you see the care which is taken about the plants and all that we care for here. In everything we do, we try to bring the positive side of Malawi culture and at the same time authenticity. So people don't feel cheated. They come and there's all part of, you know, looking at Malawi as a place where one can be proud and not looking at Malawi as a place of poor people. I think Malawi are very wealthy people. They have a fantastic wealth of spirituality that unfortunately many of us Westerners have lost. And I think that we have no reason to, as Malawian, to play the role of a beggar when we have so much to offer.